Welcome to another edition of Minor Obsession. Scott Lieberman with Sean Newton. And we've got our post game for the Clemson Tigers versus the Charlotte 49ers. And Sean, I think there was a chance very early on.
There was a chance very early on to make a little noise, I'd say, for sure, yeah.
So quick recap. We won't go through drive by drive, but we get the ball. We go 3 and out. We punt the ball. First play on Clemson's offense, handoff, fumble, recovered by Charlotte. And the referees rule that the guy was down.
Not down,
with
forward progress.
Forward progress. But the whistle wasn't blown technically until a second after the fumble. No timeout or anything, no official review. Next play, 50-yard bomb by Clemson. And I think that kind of set the tone for the game. I thought maybe if we got that, maybe we kick a field goal, potentially have a lead, 3-0, maybe even get in the end zone, 7-0. And that was kind of the beginning of the unluckiness we felt in the first couple minutes of the first quarter. And obviously, talent-wise, we're not necessarily going to match up to the number one team in the country. So we need everything to kind of go our way. And then the things that could have went our way did not, to just add on to it. So that was kind of the quick and dirty recap there. We then had a really nice drive. I was like, wow, we're moving the ball on Clemson's first defense. Threw a pick six where I believe the guy stepped out of bounds about at the 5-yard line. They probably would have punched it in anyway, but just saying. And then there was one more almost turnover there on a questionable potential backwards lateral that Charlotte also recovered that didn't go our way either. And with all of that, Clemson continued to score, and we did not. And the rest is kind of gets to the end score of 52-10. Niners made a field goal and also got a touchdown, which Chris Reynolds ran in on the keeper on a third down play. Anything to add to the overall scoring, Sean?
Yeah, I think Healy described it best after the game. He said something like, we're not a good enough team right now to shoot ourselves in the foot. And we did that. So the refs definitely didn't help us on that fumble recovery. I think that would not have changed the outcome of the game, though, or even the complexion of the game necessarily. You get that fumble recovery. We still had just gone 3 and out. Maybe we move the ball enough to kick a field goal, and it's 3-0 Charlotte, and we have something to cheer about for a minute. But at the end of the day, what I saw on the field was a team with depth beyond imagination and size beyond imagination, made up of almost entirely NFL-level athletes. I mean, some of the guys look like they were 30 years old already. Reynolds, trying to pass it, had no chance of getting it over the defensive linemen who were several inches taller than him at minimum. Some of them probably a foot and a half taller than him. He just had no way to see the field, and I think that's really put in our product on the field versus their product on the field. The only way we come out with a shock the world win is if literally everything goes in our favor. So Clemson's fumbling the ball, we actually get them. It's short yard situations, not at midfield, because then you've still got 50 yards to go on a really good defense. So I liked what I saw, though. I mean, I think what we put on the field, and we heard it. We walked around the stadium and talked to some Clemson fans, and what we heard from them was nothing but good things. They all said, and maybe this is just because they don't take us seriously right now, but I felt good about hearing people say, hey, you're playing the number one team in the country today. You don't really intimidate us, but we've been keeping up with your program, and that new coach of yours looks like he's really got a team he's putting together, and I think you guys are on a really good trajectory. Hearing stuff like that from fans of the number one team in the country who probably have no business even knowing who Charlotte is really, really good sign in my mind.
Yeah, for sure. For me, the bright spot specifically was the running game.
Yeah.
It was called out in the press conference that we have a good running team. We both talked about this before the game, that we thought Clemson was going to focus on the running game and stop the running game and force us to pass. And with all of that, with the entire stadium knowing that we're going to run the ball and pretty much the same play over and over again, kind of that shotgun QB option handoff, Benny LeMay and McAllister both were averaging 4.5 yards per carry and had some really nice runs against the first team defense than they did against the second team defense and whatnot. But we had, like, back to what I was talking about, that second drive after they scored, we had a pretty nice drive with a couple of first down, third down conversions, including a longer third down conversion, like a 3rd and 5 on a running play. I was very impressed with our running game, and really solidified to me that we are one of the best running teams in the country, and we can do that. If we can do it against the number one team in the country, why can't we do it against everyone else? And Benny LeMay really is an NFL caliber talent potentially.
Yeah, agreed. And the other side of the ball too, I thought Highsmith showed that he's really NFL caliber talent on defense. He was after the quarterbacks all day long. He only ended up with 1 sack, but there are quite a few times on some of the longer routes that he was close and showed that he was a bit much for the offensive line to handle. I think if we had 2 Alex Highsmiths on the team, we might have come out of the game with a few more sacks as well, and again, wouldn't have changed the entire outcome of the game, but maybe the complexion of it, where it's they're not pulling first stringers after the end of the first quarter.
For sure. And I'd just like to point out yet again, we are pretty freaking good at talking about the spreads and the lines, because as of right now, I'm 5-1 and you're 4-2.
Yep.
With this game pretty much being dead on, we hit the over, which we talked about barely, but we hit the over, and the spread, depending on what line you got, you either lost, which we predicted if you took Charlotte at 41.5, or you pushed if you got Charlotte at 42. So I count that as another correct pick on our part.
Yeah, and we were off on the score. I think I said 72-17, so that's off 20 points on one side and 7 on the other, and I think you said something like 60 to 6. So we were a little off on that, but that's we weren't sure. At least I wasn't sure whether Dabo was going to keep his foot on the pedal for longer than he did, and he didn't, to his credit. I mean, I appreciate that. It made the game a little more fun to watch and gave us some things to cheer about along the way when he was pulling Lawrence in the first quarter. I mean, we saw 5 different quarterbacks in that game, which is just crazy. But, flip side of the ball is they've got some really good players who could start on most every other college football team and choose to go to Clemson not to start right away to be on the number one team in the country. And so getting them some playing time when you've got an opponent like Charlotte coming into town has got to be on Dabo's mind as well, to see what else he's got in the back burner when people like Lawrence move on to the NFL and some of the other starters. So I think it could have been higher if they didn't have second and third string players in. I believe, don't quote me on this, but I think I read something like 111 different players touched the field yesterday night, which is just crazy. I mean, not just Clemson. I think that includes Charlotte players too, but still, that's almost full roster caliber stuff there.
Yeah, and we also touched the field at the end of the night, so that was cool.
Yeah. But all in all, I would say the bright spots that we thought we had were there. I don't know how the team takes it. We watched them walk off the field. They look like they came away expecting that to happen and weren't too shocked by the outcome, so that's good. But that's one of the things we talked about in the pregame was, does this become, hey, look what we did with Clemson, and we actually looked okay going into Conference USA play, and hey, if we can score 10 on them, we can score 100 on anybody else? Or does this become a, wow, we're really far away from top-tier talent, and we kind of get down on yourself going into Conference USA play? We'll have to see. Who knows? We got FAU coming up next week, so that'll be a good indicator as to how we respond to this game and what the player's mindset is going into it.
For sure. I'm really looking forward to that game because I think it's the first time, counting out App, I would say, where we're playing kind of a comparable opponent and see if we can get a win over a comparable opponent, because I feel like UMass and Gardner-Webb are kind of easier games, and then App was a tough game that we really showed up to play, and then Clemson obviously wasn't realistic. I feel like FAU is back in that kind of category of solid team within the conference that we can really show how good we are, especially if we can beat them like we beat some of these other teams.
Well, and to the credit of the Niners and Coach Healy and staff getting the team ready, I mean, when you look outside of the stats and just look at what you see on the field, I mean, the entire game, it was 17-0 in the first quarter. Then they scored 21 more points in the second quarter to our 3. And so going into halftime, for a lot of teams out there with the wrong kind of coaching staff or a different kind of coaching staff, that's easy to say, look, this game's over. Let's move on to next week. Let's just, try and not get hurt. And to the credit, I saw all of the players on the field still trying their best. I mean, I think his words are, nobody's going to play with more energy, heart, passion, and enthusiasm than we do. And I feel like they showed that in one of the more difficult situations to show that, when you're down a ton against a team that you've got no shot at coming back from.
Yep, and don't forget positivity.
And positivity, yep.
Yeah, absolutely. It was fun. It was fun from a Niners fan perspective, just knowing school without football, knowing school to football, knowing school to football, playing at Clemson is kind of a really cool evolution in just 6 years.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'll say, so in general, here's a personal side of it for me. I drove up to Kentucky a couple years ago. That was our first Power 5 opponent we ever played. I thought it was cool. We were supposed to have an alumni tailgate that had to be canceled because there weren't enough people willing to drive to Kentucky to go see them play. Granted, that's a little bit further than Clemson, but not a ton. I mean, it's probably 5 to 6 hours instead of 2.5. And we did have an okay crowd there, maybe 40 to 100 people, somewhere in that, show up to the game, if I remember correctly. But on the other side of it, the Kentucky fans weren't there. It was like half full. They had no idea who we were, had no interest in coming to see us play. And I know Clemson was family weekend, but in general, just again, hearing Clemson people know who we are, the energy and positivity and excitement around Charlotte as a whole has grown exponentially in the past 2 years. Just not even talking about just football, but football is a big contributor to that. And Will Healy's opinion and Alex and Marcus and everybody else on staff, their perspective on life and their perspective on football and how it affects our school and how great they think our school is, it shows, and I think the rest of the country notices that too. And so from a personal perspective, it's just great to be able to spend 5 hours out of my day to drive somewhere to see a team play and actually feel like it was worth my time.
And you said they canceled the alumni tailgate for the Kentucky game. This one, not only did they not cancel it, there was 300 plus people at it that they ran out of chicken tenders in like 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was great. It was awesome. I saw there was a huge tailgate for Normulance too from pictures that we saw. So I loved how many people came. Our visitor section was packed. We saw green shirts sit in throughout the rest of the stadium for people buying their own tickets, which is awesome. So the excitement on our side too is just unbelievable. What are we? 7-8 years in from our first season of football. I mean, just the leaps and bounds we've traveled in 4 games is larger than the entire growth we've had in the first 7 years of our program, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to more fun games on the road against Power 5 teams. I know we've got Tennessee coming up again, I believe, next year. We got Florida on the schedule, Georgia. We've got
Chapel
Hill, which shouldn't be that hard to beat since App beat them.
Yeah.
So, little digs.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, it was a fun time. It was cool to see how many people were behind the 49ers and came out to Clemson, that we put a product on the field that wasn't embarrassing and something we could be proud of. And I'm looking forward to the rest of the season and hopefully going bowling.
Agreed. I think the first 4 games solidified in my mind that that's the goal. I know nobody on staff wants to commit to that goal for the first year, but we're 2-2 coming out of the stretch. If you listen to our preseason recaps, that's exactly what I predicted would be coming out of our non-conference play, 2-2. That happened. We were dangerously close to being 3-1, and going into Conference USA play, I think we go from being, in people's minds, one of the bottom teams in the conference to potentially competing with North Texas, Marshall, and a couple other schools, ODU, for being
UAB for sure.
UAB, yeah, those kind of 4 schools there for being who's going to come out on top out of Conference USA. So excited for the next couple months to see what happens there, but I don't see any way this train's slowing down unless we keep having injuries pile up. It really hurt to not have Ben DeLuca and Jeff Gimmel out on the field this week, and Tyreek Harris still out, who hasn't seen playing time at all this season. Hurt having all of them off the field on defense. Being able to make up for that is awesome, and having some players who can fill in those roles, but just having that extra leadership around is huge too. So hopefully we can get at this point, I don't know if Tyreek's going to come back or redshirt. I don't think there's been a call there. And Jeff, let's hope his ankle is okay and he can come back here in the next week or two. And then again, we mentioned this on the pregame, but Ben DeLuca's out for the season. So that's it's difficult, but at least you know now, and you've got time to prepare and figure out who's playing. And I thought our secondaries played very well in their absence so far.
Yep. Well, let's hope that we stay healthy and we continue to play really good and hard and we win some games and we go bowling. And we'll have some more podcasts for you. We'll have our FAU preview releasing Thursday night, Friday morning, so you have time to listen to it before the game on Saturday. And we'll also have our other sports podcast, which is coming out every other Tuesday. And fortunately for you, this Tuesday is that other Tuesday. So we'll be talking about women's golf, men's golf, tennis, soccer, volleyball, and anything else we could think of. Track and field, whatever's happening with the Niners, we'll be talking about it. So be on the lookout for that as well.
And until then, wear green.
And go Niners.